Okay, so here are 4 facets of utilitarianism. For consequentialism, the rightness of action is determined solely by their consequences. So, kung yung tag consequentialism, it refers to um, kanang identification whether or not an action is right solely by their result or outcome. So, in the view of consequentialism, mahimo ra, ma-measure nimo ang rightness of an action based on the result of the action. Okay? For hedonism, utility is the degree to which an act produces pleasure. Hedonism is the thesis that pleasure or happiness is the good that we seek and that we should seek. So as I have said before, for hedonism, it speaks about doing anything, no, for the sake of happiness. So kung yung kag anything that you do gives you happiness would be considered as a good act on the view of hedonism. Okay? Whatever the action is, as long as it gives off pleasure, it is considered as a good thing to do according to hedonism. Maximalism, now maxin dire, wa no, murag di is di na sa estudyante diri no, namday sa kuan facets. So for maximalism, no, a right action produces the greatest good consequences and the least bad. So for maximalism, in order for you to identify whether or not a particular action is good, no, or right, sakto ang imong gibuhat, is that when it produces more good consequences than the bad ones. So when you do something and then although it gives off a bad consequence for particular person, pero it gives off a good amount of pleasure or kanang goodness or good result to most people or the majority, so then it is considered as a good act. No, murag isinasawalang bahala ang katong list, no, nga na kanang mga gagmayng butang nga naman gajud, no, diba? In everything that we do, although we seek to do things for good, naa man gajud lagi nga kanang di gajud siya ako nang mo part in siya as bad thing, as a bad consequence. Okay, for universalism, now the consequences to be considered are those of everyone affected and everyone equally. So in contrast to maximalism, an act can only be considered as right if, no, the consequences to be considered are those of everyone affected and everyone equally. So equal sila dapat. If it is it can only be considered as a good act if it gives off everyone affected by the consequences a good thing. Balance ni siya. Okay, mo na siya universalism. Okay, two formulation of utilitarianism. Now, for theory, no, principles of utility states that the best action is that which produces the greatest happiness and or reduces pain. So, kadtong muhatag nimo ultimate happiness or it reduces your pain, mo na gitawag na to best action to take according to principles of utility. According to the greatest happiness theory, we ought to do that which produces the greatest happiness and least uh, pain for the greatest number of people. So kung ako sa principle of utility, no, i-consider niya nga best action if it gives you a lot of pain and reduces a lot of happiness, and reduces pain. But with greatest happiness, ingon jud siya nga we ought, meaning to say we should do an act that which produces greatest happiness. If it is not a greatest happiness, then don't do it. It's not the best action according to great happiness theory. And it should only be on you as the doer, but also on a lot of number of people according to greatest happiness. Now, sumana sila. The two formulation of utilitarian. Okay, two types of utilitarianism. First one is the act, the second is the rule. So, act means an action is right if and only if it produces the greatest balance of pleasure over pain for the greatest number, according to Jeremy Bentham. So, ingon siya, in act, two types niya of utilitarianism. So, in act, sa action, basing on the action, an action could only be right if it offers a great balance of pleasure to a great number of people. So, meaning to say, kung maka-benefit ang greatest number of people, then the action is considered as right. No? So, that is an act. The rule, no, states that an action is right if and only if it conforms to a set of rules, the general acceptance of which would produce the greatest balance of pleasure over pain for the greatest number of people. So, kung ang act, ingon siya nga ang action kuno mahimo laman nga right kung it gives off the greatest kanang benefit for the greatest people, ang rule pud ning ingon na ang action kuno would only be considered as right if it follows or conforms to the set of rules, no, that are generally accepted, no, to which it would produce the greatest happiness or pleasure for the greatest number of people. So, lahi ha ang action o ang rule. Ang difference nila is, ang action, it only views, no, with particularly on the act. Makaingon ta nga ang action, kung naka-benefit ang daghan or kung ang action is good for everyone else, then right siya. But in rule, no, it should be that the action conforms or dapat nahaom siya sa rules that are generally accepted kuno. So, there is this particular rule that is generally accepted to be the reason why maximum number of people would become happy. So, mo na rule. Mo na difference nilang duha. Okay? Okay, so here we are in your activity 1. No? So, let's apply the utilitarianism principles on these actual cases. No? So, what I want you to do is research on this Coventry during World War II and then make a short 1 to 2 pages. Oh no, okay. So what I want you to do is, of course, give off your thoughts on this, kane, decision at Coventry during World War II and the Ford Pinto case. Oh. So you are going to send this on kuan. Unsa to karong adlaw? Ay sa wait. Naglibog na ko unsa karong adlaw. Asa naman yung schedule of classes? Supposedly, our ethics is... Look, wait! Ganun, di man ni mao. Malabas, where's my schedule of classes? Oh my God! Okay, Okay. Oh my God. So, today ni dapat ganyan ng 2:30. Okay, so, okay. So, this will be due on Thursday at 2:30 to 4 p.m. your activity 1, and this is what you're going to do. Using the voice message in Facebook, no? I want you to record your thoughts, no? Remember ha nga, tag 1 minute lang koan kanang ansay tawag ana voice message. So you should record your voice message continuously. Meaning to say kanang simultaneous ka na bang sunod-sunod ba? Basta mag-record ka karon dyan. Gatuturo record nalabad magbuwag-buwag na. So compose first all your thoughts in one paper, of course, and then you can read it and then record it in a voice message and then send it on our group chat, not on my personal message. It should be in group chat so that your other classmates can hear your thoughts. So that will count for your oral recitation. Okay? So research on the decision of Coventry during World War II and the Ford Pinto case, and then give your thoughts about it in application of the utilitarian theory that I have discussed earlier. Okay. Okay. Let's proceed. So, uh, mo na to ang utilitarianism ha. I hope that you have now a clear understanding or knowledge of what utilitarianism is. So if you're just going to wrap up on ano dyan, it can be considered as utilitarianism if majority of people would be benefited over the action. Okay, so let us read on basahon ang criticisms of Bentham's theory nga utilitarianism. So Bentham's theory could mean that if 10 people would be happy watching a man being eaten by wild dogs, it would be a morally good thing for the 10 men to kidnap someone, especially someone whose death would not cause grief to many others, and throw that man into a cage of wild, hungry dogs. So, makaingon ta karon sa kanang na theory or concept ni Bentham no nga, just because a particular action would give happiness or pleasure to a great number of kanang kuan people, you are now allowed to do that thing even if it hurts one particular person. So just as this in example, liman naman po kag mukidnap kag usa ka tawo para mo ipakaon sa mga iro tungod kay malipay ang napo katawo magtan-aw nga nay tawo nga gikaon sa hungry dogs. But that is actually happening even in our kuan kanang way back in kakuan man ang movie wherein ang ilang isabong kay mga tao, no, during those kind of mga classic movies bitaw like 300, what else? So, pa itong nakit-an ha. Kada bang, na sila murag battling arena, nga, naidaghang mo tanaw sa mga kilid, unja, naiduha ka tao nga magpinsingay diha, pak, magpinatsa na silang duha diha. And then, mga tao ka murag, ganahan po ng mga tao. The killing of these people inside the arena has given them much pleasure. So in town pud ang katong naa didto nakasalang no sa kadtong kanang killing arena na mga matay na lang mga jud pod. So usa na sa mga kanang manifestation bitaw kan mga example of utilitarianism. So in order to give pleasure to majority, no, you can kill kuno makulbaan si iko adyo jud mo pag-ingana ha. No, underneath that, these are for academic purposes, just to trace down, no? Trace down in order to understand the actions of people from the past, sa karon, no? I do not adyo gud mo. Di gud ko mo recommend nga ay bahaton ni nako kay utilitarianism and ini nalabad si A. Taka-taka. Okay? These are for academic purposes. But if you're going to, kanang, di ba, when I watch movie like that, may yun ko nga, makaanag ko nga, anong gi-allow mo po na sa ilang government kintahay? Oh my God, the government is so barbaric. No? Huway kaluoy, huway walang puso. Makaingana gajud ko. Oh my God, if this thing is happening nowadays, hindi ginoo ko, makulbaan gajud ko. So, mo na day na, that is because in the previous ages, sila concept of humanism. Ang ila is, they were following, no? The theories created by these particular scholars like Bentham, maniingon nga, pwede ka mapatay so as long as it gives off, even Duterte is doing that. Ano, sige, pasig na ay mga kuan din hindi Duterte. Sabi, hindi na naman tamag. Let's not talk about that. Teachers are not allowed to share their political stance in the class. So, let's focus on katong mga karaan nga mo na. I think you have seen a lot of movies. There are a lot of movies like that. No? Okay. So, mao na usa sa criticism sa utilitarianism. No nga di jud siya maadyo pud no. Di siya maadyo nga theory. Kay liman kag pwede rag mo kidnap kag usa ka tawo para imo ipakaon ilawog nimo sa mga iro for the happiness of 10 people. So 1:10, of course, the 10 is majority. So maximum na nga number of people that is given pleasure upon seeing someone else nga gusab-gusab sa mga iro. So, mo na usa sa criticism. Meaning to say, gi-criticize, no? Gi-criticize. Kaya ba mo siguro sa criticize, no? Kasi mo improve mo, hala, nindot ning kung ano utilitarianism. O gani, criticism. Mo na yung mga negatives or the lapses of this theory. So, maadyo man siya nga theory, no? Because it is after on the pleasure of a great number of people. But, these are the criticism. Meaning to say, the lapses or the holes, no? Ang mga negatives ani nga theory. Okay? Another is John Stuart Mill's adjustment to utilitarianism. Mill argues that we must consider the quality of the happiness, not merely the quantity. So, going back to the example nga kanang happiness of the 10 people. So, instead nga mo go on ka with sige, mangidnap ko, kahit pakaos iro, karong malipay ning napo kabuk. Ingon si John Stuart Lataw Mill ay. Diba mo dyan, Stuart movie na kakit ka dyan nga ilaga. Kasi ingon si John Stuart Mill nga di ra jud pod ang happiness ay mo i-consider, but you have to look at the quality of the happiness, not just the quantity. Meaning to say, tan-aw sa puni mo, i-analyze sa puni mo kung ang kanang happiness sa 10 people is really of quality. Meaning to say, long-lasting ba ang ilang happiness? Kaya basig ma-happy rin sila at that time, nga nakakita sila nga kanang ay gigusab-gusab ang sa kataw sa iro, and then afterwards yung sila, hala, nagbasol si Iko nga nung cheer up kung nga gigusab-gusab siya sa iro. O, di ba? So, the quality of the happiness that this maximum number of people is experiencing is poor quality. Nga naman, di mo sa lasting. No? Lahi raman kung lasting ang imong happiness, that means the quality of the happiness is good. Pero kung 1 minute, 1 hour, or pila ra na ka seconds ang happiness to last, then that is not of good quality. So, dapat dili na nimo buhaton ang particular act even if moyong ka based on utilitarianism, sakto ni nga act, this is a right act to do because it would give pleasure to the numerous number of people. But the question is, what quality of happiness is or does this particular act would give to that particular number of people? Dili ra ang quantity ang imong tan-awon. Uy, kay kung ano man siya, kay daghan mang ma-happy, daghan mang malipay. So, tan-awon nimo kung unsa ang duration, no, sa kalipay nga bation aning mga tawhana. Okay? Now, as an example, for example, some might find happiness with a pitcher of beer and pizza, Others may find happiness watching a fine Shakespearean play. No, the quality of happiness is greater with the latter. So, mao na siya. Okay. Asa naman ko? Asa ako, class? Joke. Okay. Asa na bitaw ko? Ano ba ni? Oh, man, dada. Oh. Another quality argument of male is that he said it is better to be a human being dissatisfied than a pig satisfied. Better to be Socrates dissatisfied than a fool satisfied. So, yung kani nga argument states nga, do not settle for less. No? Nganong magpaka human being man ka, magpaka pig, magpaka baboy man ka, although you are satisfied, nga di makababoy, human man ka. Nganong magpaka iro man ka, although satisfied ka, nga di man ka iro. No? Mo na yung pasabot. Mayon sa, nganong magpaka kanang, say nga na magpaka full man ka, full is buang, no? Nganong magpaka buang man ka, although you are satisfied, nga di makabuang. Bright man ka. No? You can actually apply that in your life. Hala, pangutanahin yung kagalingon. Nganong musugot man kag 75 imong grado, nga di man ka bugo, bright man ka. Oh, pangutanahin yung kagalingon. Okay? So, mao na. Just because your 75 grades would give pleasure to most of your or to a greater number of people like your family, nalipay kay, nakapasar kasi akong anak. Imong friends, nakapasar jud akong amigo. Imong loved ones, oh my God, nakapasar akong love. But the question is, mora din ay kaya nimo. O mo na diha ang argument. Why do you settle for less when you can have the best? So mo na isang pasabot. It is better, mas maadyo pa kuno mahimong human nga di satisfied than a pig satisfied. Ming kakaron ma'am nga nung namalagi word nga satisfaction. Na satisfied ka over very low quality. So why are you satisfied with a low quality when you can do something to achieve satisfaction with high quality? So kung di ka mulihok to achieve high satisfaction, so mas maadyo pang ari ka nga mahimo kang average or bright nga estudyante nga di satisfied kay wa siya na Dean's Lister pero 85 ang grado. Then magpaka bugo ka nga 75 ra imong grado. At least daghang na happy. Diba? So, mao na. Okay? Ponder that. Ponder on that. Kita lang ba kay, we tend to like, okay na ni, uy, bahala po. Sama ng sobra. Kanunay kasi kumaka, nga na, uy, may ko, umayan ako estudyante nga naon nga, oh my God, dear, you can do so much better. Sama ng sobra, ma'am. Oh my God! Medyo lami adyo sagpaon, be? Aron makaundan. It's not about the sobra, no? It's more like finding your capacity, your total utility when it comes to performing an action. Daghan kay kog mga estudyante nga ingana nga. Bahala na. I would be a pig as long as I am satisfied with my lakaw-lakaw, kuan, ug pangmalang mananap, than being human and dissatisfied. Daghan kay kog na-observe. Sometimes I feel sana kanang sayangan ko, usahay maglagot ko, no? Kalami hagbungon, gamay na laman siya kuwang. No? Sometimes pod maluoy ko, no? Because I would think that maybe they have not really actually found themselves mo nang nga ingana. So I hope that you're not part of those students nga ahong na-observe, okay? Okay, another quality argument states that as between his own happiness and that of others. Utilitarianism requires him to be as strictly impartial as disinterested and benevolent spectator. Okay? That's very, actually, that's related to what we have discussed sa later, previous slide. So, di na tasig discuss, ana. Parihara na sa katong discuss kanina. Another criticism of utilitarianism states, or according to Bernard Williams, states that doctrine of negative responsibility is in utilitarianism as well. But what is the doctrine of negative responsibility? Now, negative responsibility means that the notion of negative responsibility is that an agent is responsible not only for the consequences she produces by her own actions, but that she is also responsible for the consequences that she allows to happen by other agents or events she fails to prevent other agents from producing. Remember mo sa kadtong akong example na kanang staying with someone over a relationship bisan pa og kanang gipasakitan na ka, gitunto na ka, kabugat ma'am, uy mangigo man, kinsa dere ang naigo. Bisag giadyo na kag buang, but yet you stay, bisag giabog na ka sa imong partner, yet you stay, ingon kag huwag mo kong iwan. Okay lang na ako ray maghigugma nimo, okay ra na ho. Narabay mga ingana. Okay ra jud na ho, ako ray maghigugma nimo basta adyaw ko bijae. But that is a negative responsibility. Why? Because the negative things are result of your action of staying with that particular person. You also allow negative action to be produces from your partner. So, di ba yung ko ganina nga, pagtuon mo, maadyo na imong gibuhat, kay nagmartir ka, you stayed with that particular person, bisag di naka love, kay it gives you pleasure, but you allow this person, your partner, to sin against you. Ano gitawag og doctrine of negative responsibility. You allow, no, a thing or an action to happen by another agent kadto imong partner, no, nga makabuhat na nun sa og negative nga kanang butang. Sisimayin ka, di nam jud ko nahigugma nimo yun saon mga jud niya. Bang okay ra na ho, wa ka nahigugma na ho, basta stay, mag-uyab lamang gihapon ta unja. So kung manguyab zaglain, nahimo na nun sang dautan, di ba? In the eyes of other people, in the eyes of your friends, siya mo'y dautan. When in fact, nakahibaw na ka. You know, nga wa na kaghigugma. Supposedly, gusto na niya makig-break up. But because you think that the act of staying, no, is a good act because it gives you pleasure, kay arang gugma agad jud nimo anang tawhana. So, mo na gitawag og doctrine of negative responsibility. You causes that particular person to act out in a negative way because di man ka gusto makig-end up na sa relationship. Wa nimo na prevent, no, ang other agent, no, from committing negative acts. In fact, ikaw ang nakaamong. Sumuna, pundiri na yun. Grabe si ka, ma'am, kami, imbis kami, pa biktima kami na hinuisadaan. Yes! Technically, yes. Gawas kung wa ka ni jaing na. Wa ka nakahibaw. Nga wa na day jay gugma nimo. So, that's a different story. We were talking about like, you are aware, pero para nimo, it's a good act if you stay, if the relationship is intact because it gives you pleasure man. So, that's a different story kung wala ka kahibaw. Okay? Okay. Here is another activities, ma'am. Uy, sige, sige, hataw activity. Kapuya. Kapoy man jud lagi ning mo eskwela. Diba? Kung saan man ang pag-eskwela, dili makapoy. Hmm. Di ka jud maangay sig kapoy-kapoy. Kaya that is for your own good. Okay? For your activity too. No? Okay, so it stays there. Now, utilitarianism plays fast and loose with God's commandments. Now, if lying, stealing, or killing could lead to an increase of happiness for the greatest number, we are told by utilitarian concept that we should lie, steal, or kill. The question is, isn't that a rejection of God's commands? Okay, so of course, what you're going to do is record yourself in the video. Video na po, dili na voice message, no? Pero exciting. So you can have something to do, no? Kaya sige raga dyan mo post-post o maligong dagat, mga tungatong bukid. So, unfriend is ma'am. Uy, unfriends are exempt sa mga picture. Kay bitter ka adyo. Yes, I am. Charot. This is just for your own good. Dalabad si So you can practice presenting your thoughts in front of ganin mo audience. Yeah, hay ganin mo kay mo audience. Okay, so you record yourself. This is what you did last output. And then, of course, you present your idea, no, about this situation. You can cite resources that you might say tawag na kanang pwede mo mangita mga resources or anything that could back up your thoughts about this, no? You can cite the Bible or you can say, bahala mo ka muna, be creative, okay? So, for the rubrics of this video would be contents would be 20%, the grammar and fluency, meaning to say how fluent and also the grammar during your presentation is 20%. Ay, lamang, 25 di ay ang contents. For fluency and coherence would be 15. Pila na, 25 plus 15, bulok ang may strag math. 35 no? 35 ba? Isa, wait, paitaning recording. Oy, aman jud po'y makatubag na ho. Ako ra mga jud po'y mo tubag sa akong pangutana. Taysa ka mangita pog calculator. Yes, you're right. Your teacher is very bogo when it comes to computation. No, I will die with computation. If you're going to ask me to compute something, I will die out of stress. So sa to, 25 plus okay, so 25 points for your contents, no? And then 15% for your coherence and grammar, and 10% for the videography. Meaning to say, not the edit ha nga na mga kuan. Ay, okay lang ako yung mga edits as long as the video is clear, the voice is clear. Ano mo pag nice po ng video ha, di po nang blur, na naghiwi-hiwi, na nagpankuan, nagtusok sa panadiha. Basta kaya ka na pong kaaya-ayang tingnan, kaaya-ayang pakinggan. So that's 10 points. And we call it videography. Okay? So mana siya ang rubrics. That's how I am going to grade your video. Asa na ko dapit? Naara makadahas injo, nag-record, sig jama-jama. Okay, so, Mill answer to the godless theory. So, murag, ang utilitarianism is sometimes tagged as the godless theory. Lima namin ka nang i-allow kag mo steal, mo kill for the pleasure of a great number of people. Makulbaan pa na no. So, Mill answers this godless theory criticism. Now, what is the nature of God? So karon gi-question mabag nangutana sang what is unsa ko ni nature sa God? Nganong mo allow siya with this particular um actions in the theory of utilitarianism. Does God make arbitrary rules just to see if we will obey? No? Or does God make rules that He knows will lead to our happiness? Now, if the latter statement is true, doesn't it make sense God would want us to use our God-given reason to look at the situation? So, mo na usa sa mga criticism, no, on the godless theory. Another is that if it be a true belief that God desires above all things the happiness of his creatures, and that this was his purpose in their creation, utility is not a godless doctrine, but more profoundly religious than any other. Whatever God has thought fit to reveal on the subject of morals must fulfill the requirements of utility in supreme degree. So that's another. These are just, I'm just going to read this because these are just mga criticism, no, on the theory of utilitarianism. Another criticism of utilitarianism is that if one must decide the probable outcome of an act before knowing whether it is bad or good, how can children learn to evaluate acts since they know so little of what consequences might arise from their actions? Which is true, pud bitaw, no? No. Saan naman itong mga bata? So, that is why there is a particular age of reason, meaning to say nga kanang children are blameless until such time that they reach the age of reason, because the age of reason is kanang mao na ang stage sa life sa kabata wherein we considered, or it is considered, that they already know the consequences of their action. Kaya na mga 1-year-old, 2 years, wa pa yung taon na buot, wa pa nakahibaw nga kung ila ding isaksak ang tinidor sa kanang outlet, makurentihan dai sila or mamatay sila. Ay, kahibaw din na sila. Di ba wa pa man? Because they have not reached the age of reason. No? Pila edad sa age of reason? Nakalimot naman ko. Kuan man yata? 7 or 8. I don't know. I'm not sure. You just Google it. Pero di ko sure ha. Pero mura. Ugwa na nausob. Murag 7. 7 years old.